All right, I'm here with Sue. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Galena.
I'm so thankful that you said yes to an interview. It's such a joy.
Mm, mm.
I'm just going to put this in the view where both of us can be seen, and I think we're good now. Still learning how to do this. So as we're jumping in, it's Friday.
Yay!
Yay! Mid of the workday.
Yeah.
End of the week. Thank you so much for saying yes. And let's just kind of jump in. And I would love for you to tell readers, viewers, listeners, people curious about Peace with Food, who you are, say a little bit about you, and maybe even how we met.
Okay, sure. Um, Meeting you, super fortunate. But anyway, my name is Sue, and I love personal growth, personal exploration. I think that's part of my purpose on the planet is to learn what I need to learn about all things. And when I know more about myself, I can know more about others, which is what relationship is all about. And so, um, in my personal learning, I had found a somatic therapist, but she was pretty far out of the area and it was going to be a challenge to see her on a regular basis. And so she referred me to you. And so I started working with you, and we did a lot of work that was so grateful for me around just putting me in my body. I really think I was a head and a heart that was kind of experiencing the world without any sense of the vehicle I was traveling in. And so much of that practice was really powerful. And I didn't specifically come to you for the Peace with Food. That was something that you offered. But what was interesting with that, it was like, oh my gosh, how do you know? How do you know that I've been struggling with food my whole life in terms of the relationship with food? Weight going up and down. And, I don't know that I'd ever consider myself having eating disorders, but certainly times of really disordered eating. And so when you offered that, it was like, oh, here's another invitation to see maybe how this all syncs up in terms of mind, body, heart.
Yeah,
Oh,
beautiful. I do remember this process of really what you call putting you in your body,
hmm.
like really making the invitation to, you know, come come into more presence, from here down.
Yeah, yeah.
And just how beautiful that was, and how many sessions we had, and we had live sessions at the time,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
of just really exploring what is it like in the present moment to see what's it like now.
Hmm.
Yeah, like the body remembers all these things, but what's it like now?
Hmm.
And I'm so grateful to you. You're so open to all of it, and it was so much fun working with you.
Well, it was super powerful. It's like, how can
Yeah,
I walk around in this big old thing and not know it's also giving information?
yeah, and a lot of it, and a
Yep,
lot of it.
all the
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah. So you said yes to Peace with Food when Peace with Food was still in its kind of early stages of curriculum development, and you were in my first Peace with Food group last year,
Mhm.
and your group is so dear to me. I'm still in
Mhm.
touch with everybody, and I'm so glad that you were in it. I have such good fond memories of you guys working together. But before you started the group, how did you feel about your challenges with food? And then how do you feel about them now? What has shifted for you?
I think I would go through seasons with food when I would be at war with food, um, and almost like in a cycle of being good and then being bad.
Mhm.
So being obedient and eating all the good things, and then the rebellion part of, well, it's the weekend, so I can eat whatever, right? But I think what peace with food really taught me is neither one of those are places of agency, right?
Mm.
Both of those are cages. Both of those
Mm.
are stucknesses. Both of those are outside. And so the relationship wasn't real. It wasn't accurate. It was just really, I describe it as running between the two poles, right?
Mhm.
The pole of being good, which I could stay in there for a while and be like, oh, I'm so good. Look at me, I'm so good. And then the pole would shift when I couldn't be good anymore. And then that brings on that cycle of the failure and the why can't I stay good? Um, yeah. So what's changed is it's not about the food. It's just not about the food. And so much more of what I learned in that was when I could step away and take a better look at, again, what was going on in my body in terms of regulation and dysregulation. And what I could start to see why I was eating what I was eating was probably based on some regulation state of either hunger, which is dysregulating because you're hungry, but it's just information, or was I eating out of an emotional place? Um, that's agency, right? That's not between cages. That's just, oh. And so when I could meet it, oh, look at that. I'm eating chips and I'm eating a whole bag of chips because I'm stressed or I'm anxious. That doesn't mean I need to stop eating the chips, but I'm now making a connection. I'm eating the chips because I'm anxious.
Mhm.
And then what else do I need?
Mhm.
Because the chips don't fix
No.
forever. It fixes it in the moment. It seems like a fix. And so I think what Peace with Food really taught me is to be gracious and kind with the food and the choices I was making, but ultimately, what else could I do
Mhm.
that would really meet the need of what my body was really asking for?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Is it? Did I get it right?
You
Because I
totally
really
did.
feel like that's
Yeah.
what I
That
got.
that's what I observed in you too, is like this ability to really slow down and really notice everything that's going on instead of just being fixed on the behavior
Mhm,
of, oh, I ate the chips in this case, and then thinking about like what's wrong with that and how do I clean up after this tomorrow, like how do I fix this, and then going into the cycles of shame and failure. Whereas if it's just like, oh, it's a signal, and what
mhm,
else is needed here? What emotions can I meet? What thoughts can I meet? How can I be with myself in a way that I don't abandon myself?
mhm,
I think that's huge, because what the tricky part with emotional eating is that it does regulate, it does the, especially the crunchy stuff, right? It does the vagal work that is needed for us to come back to a relative sense of safety, which is why it's such an intelligent response. But it's a simultaneous abandonment.
mhm, mhm,
And I think that's what hurts the most, is that nobody's gonna like feel that bad from doing it once, but when we do it every day, especially during a period of time that is stressful in our lives,
mhm,
it's like we're adding, it's like a callousness to our own suffering that
mhm,
I don't think we can afford long term. I don't know if you'd
mhm.
agree.
Totally, because if we're talking about like it's a stressor that, life right now, COVID, all of that, right? It's not getting better, but it's still bringing the anxious, right? I could do chips, and then the chips could meet the need for that day, and then in the shame spiral, I'll decide, okay, yeah, I've got the awareness, I'm in an anxious space, so you should probably pick carrots instead, and then pick carrots, and they're just not as satisfying, and I'm still at chips and carrots, right?
Hmm.
I'm not
Exactly.
at what I really need to get at, which is, oh, I'm anxious about what's going on. What else? What other ways could I soothe and regulate my body that will actually meet it where it is? And so, um, yeah. And then with the piece with food, just the variety of the things that you've suggested are things that I had never ever really heard of before. Um, and they're game changers, and there's so many things that I still do today just as a way of regulating.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I love that, especially since you professionally work in, mental health
Hmm.
space, and you're somebody who has tons of tools at your disposal, but bringing the body in is so big.
Yeah.
It's so big. I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. So I'm curious, and maybe for people who are listening, what was it like for you to do this in a group versus one on one? People ask me this all the time. Can you just like do the Peace with Food stuff, but do it with me one on one? What was it like for you to do it in a group?
So I think I always come to groups kind of hesitant, but it's just that more introverted person of like, oh God, not only do I have to learn to be vulnerable about my own stuff, but I also have to learn with strangers. But I'm able to get over myself now because the group experience always offers so much more, right? You always find someone in the room who I now can always find someone in the room whose story is similar to my story. And I can also find people in the room whose story isn't the same, but their learnings become gleanings for me. Like I
Mm.
can learn from um, what they're experiencing, what they're trying, what they're doing. It's just a bigger collective experience by doing it with others. So um, I think individually it might not let me step out of myself enough to learn as much as I have with, because so much of what you talked about was also the power of the co-regulation with somebody else. And so I think that opportunity is in the group. And if it was just you and I, you're always the co-regulator,
Mm.
which is awesome and great, but it's not the same feedback as if there was six other people or four other people or whatever. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah. There's this field between us that actually digests our experience.
Hmm.
So the more there are of us, the bigger that field. And in that field, a drop of your dysregulation doesn't get as noticed, not as jarring as a drop of the same dysregulation when you're by yourself
Hmm.
or when there's just two nervous systems there.
Hmm.
And that's a very, very important thing to know. And I think also another way that I noticed, in your group there was so much wisdom, like everyone had so much self-awareness and
Right.
wisdom and maturity, and it was such a nourishing place to exchange that, not even in advice or an experience, but just sitting with people who have been through so much
Hmm.
and really being in that field of wisdom. I think that was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not alone. That kind of stepping into a group, and there's that always the stepping off the cliff idea. But then as soon as you're there, it's like, oh, okay, these are my
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
And that's a big deal because so often, eating behaviors that are not related to our nutrition needs,
Hmm.
they're often there to substitute for connection.
Hmm.
So learning how to connect, especially if it's uncomfortable in the beginning, I mean that's the gold.
Hmm.
We can all connect when it's comfortable.
Hmm.
It's when all the stuff is going on in the background.
Yeah,
You know,
totally,
it gets
totally.
a little trickier. Yeah. And you guys are so great with that. So I'm curious, you're somebody who had a lot of self-awareness and a lot of personal growth practice before you came to the group. What do you know or understand about your body now that you didn't know or understand before we started?
I think um, the biggest takeaway. I'm not, this is gonna make me cry. But the biggest takeaway is pressure really isn't helpful, as much as I thought that it was. And what I mean by that is my mind could put a lot of pressure on my body to do things, or to, and I don't mean like necessarily physical things like go run marathons, but let's go have 10 or 12-hour days. Let's go do all these things. Let's go put myself in all these positions. And it was the pressure. And I really felt like if I didn't put the pressure on my body, then I would do nothing. And so, what the takeaways have been is a new relationship with my body, to trust it and to rest when I'm tired.
Mm.
to move when I need to move, and to regulate before I'm going to do something that's dysregulating, and
Mm.
to when I find myself dysregulated, can I pick to regulate? And um, yeah, I think really just gentler, which
Mm.
is the opposite of pressure, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's hard not to cry with you around the pressure
yeah,
because, that's so strong in me and the countertransference. I have so much of my own history of pressure.
yeah,
And, as much healing as has happened in my life, it's in subtle ways, it still shows up.
yeah,
In subtle ways, it'll show up. And I'm like, wow, hi, you're still here, right?
yeah.
Yeah. That if
Well,
I,
even yesterday, it was a real life experience of, with COVID and working from home, and more ease in the schedule and how things are going because working from home. But then yesterday had a really busy back to back day, and some of it involved going out and coming back in. And I right away was back in that place again of like, shoot, I'm going to be late to this one. If this one run late, and da 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 da, right? All the things. And I could feel the pressure build again. It was just so cool to recognize I haven't been in this space in a really
mm,
long time, and I don't want to live here. I don't want to
mhm,
live here anymore. So
mhm.
I loved that I could catch that.
Yeah.
And it was my body that was telling me, I could feel all the tightnesses and all the things, all the places. And I know for me and you, I always talk about there's that connection between my diaphragmatic and my chest. And I could feel that clench. And before I
Mm,
started working with you, I didn't even know that was happening. So
yeah.
be attentive to that, and to know what that was and just name it and say we're not doing that anymore.
Mm, that's beautiful. Yeah. And that connection between your chest and your gut, right? Your heart and your gut,
Yeah,
and having that on board for you, once you've experienced it, it's like, oh, now I really notice when it's not there.
right,
What's happening now?
right.
But you almost have to have, well, you really need to have the physical, the embodied experiences of that to even have a baseline.
Hmm. Hmm.
Otherwise, it's just normal, right? And
Hmm.
what we call normal can be totally abnormal or unnatural, but it's just kind of photoshopped as
Right,
normal,
right,
right?
right.
Is we just tune out, we learn. We laugh so often in groups about like, you guys please pee when it's time to pee. Just
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
Like it's really simple stuff that we've trained ourselves to not respect our bodies and to be proud of it.
right.
It's like this like mastery, like mind over matter. It's like how is that ever something that you expect a
Right,
prize for?
right,
Yeah,
right.
but it's so in the culture.
So
It's
going to the bathroom is an act of self-care
it
and
totally,
self-compassion, right?
it
And it's like,
totally,
seriously, we need to be taught that.
yeah.
But yeah,
Be gentle with yourself. Pee when
yeah,
it's time to go.
yeah,
And it's like we teach our little kids to do that, but
right,
then we totally don't do it as
right,
adults. It's like don't hold it. If it's a little
right,
kid, it's like it'll cause this and this and
right.
this. But as adults, who do it all the time. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And we've made it normal. This is your like I'm not making crazy normal, right?
Well, and that's the pressure. And what's that pressure for? How is it getting me farther in the world? Well, actually not. It's probably wearing down my kidneys. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's wearing down all of our kidneys.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for reminding me of that. That's beautiful. I love remembering that. So, you've completed the group. It's been quite a while since
Hmm.
you completed. What do you see possible for yourself that wasn't possible before we started working together? Kind of like looking into the future. What's possible in your life now?
I think it's it's the holding of the relationship with my body
Hmm.
that creates the possibility, right? So And I'll link this to kind of like a diet or something. So if you do Weight Watchers and you learn their system and you know how many points and you know when you're doing it and when you're not doing it.
Mhm.
And they always talk about its lifestyle and you have to make all those changes. And I was never successful keeping that forever, right? But I feel like because so much of the work out of the piece of food was embodied, that I have a relationship with my body that I have had since the piece with food. And so it's
Mm.
almost it's there's so much more integration that
Mhm.
I don't worry that I will lose this relationship. I have it. It's here. It's who I'm
Mm.
being now. And so
Mm.
like I said, so yesterday to be able to notice, oh, this is pressure. Oh, there's that pressure thing. Oh, there's that seizing thing. Like, okay, what do you need to do? And that piece with food was a couple of years ago, right? I have that
Mhm.
still 2 years later, 3 years later, whatever it is. And I did it, I had zero before we started. So I just feel like that's the possibilities. I'm still inhabiting
Yeah.
a relationship with my body. Um and it's the relationship with food is different too because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that makes me so happy, and it moves me and touches me so much. Um, because I've been with you through all of this,
Yeah.
and it's just been so beautiful and so lovely to see how it stuck with you, not
Hmm.
because you learned it, but because you lived it,
Yes.
and now you continue living it out from your body in this kind of bodyful way. Instead of having to work really hard to make yourself mindful all the time, which is hard
Right.
work, which is hard
Right.
work. And it's something that we learn early on in group when we learn about interoception, that difference between feeling your way through life versus thinking your way through life and how inefficient one is versus the other.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're really like living that. It just makes
Right.
me so excited. Ah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good. So good. What else? What else is important in your journey that you'd love people who are, either currently in peace with food or like just curious about it? What would you like them to know about your own journey?
Yeah, I think peace with food has opened up possibilities. So right, so the working with you, the learning, the growing, and then it's almost like when you have a relationship with somebody new in your life, it opens up all the possibilities of what are the things that that person brings to your life. So now the relation, who you are, you can go learn to go bowling because your friend goes bowling and you never knew anything about bowling, right? They take you to new places and doing new
Mhm.
things. And so I feel like peace with food, having given me that relationship with my body, that now this is going to sound weird, but when me and my body go and do something, it's a different thing in some
Yeah.
ways because my body's introducing me to different things or doing some things in new ways.
Mm.
I had always been doing Pilates
Mm.
during the time that I had met with you, but I really feel like even that practice is super different because I'm in my body and it's not there to work out my body for weight loss now. It's there or to shape my body so that I have a cute butt. It's so I can be in my body
Mm.
and um and help it as a supportive practice to keeping the relationship moving. And so and I wouldn't have had that openness
Yeah.
to even that without peace with food.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's beautiful. You're really speaking to this experiencing from the inside out
Yeah.
during exercise, like Pilates versus outside in. Like, what is this going to make me look like?
Right. Right.
It's like, no, like, what is this doing for me right now? And how many people, this is something that boggles me daily. How many people give up on their exercise plan because it's not getting them what they signed up for externally, and then completely missing out what it's supposed to be doing inside?
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
that we are so disconnected that we can't even appreciate the intention of something, the organic intention of something, and then slapping an unnatural intention on top of it. When we can't get the unnatural intention on top of it, we give up
Mhm.
on the organic function of it. It's so strange. And I've lived that in my life. Like I know how it feels on the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's that kind of that relationship I was talking about being good and then moving over to being bad. It's like when you have that relationship with food, I was able to start to see where I can have some of those dynamics in other relationships too. And you can have that relationship with exercise that I'm going to go be good and I'm going to do the things and then I'm going to go be bad, which I don't know if that means don't go or whatever. And I really, again, feel like the congruence again is I go and I have my session and it was good and it's done. Like it was what it needed to be. So there's not a whole lot of thinking afterwards about was I good or was I bad or
Yeah.
swinging between the poles because it was a real moment in time and I was present and my body was there and I was
Yeah.
there with my body.
Yeah. There's nothing to think
So
about.
yeah, right,
There's nothing to think about.
right.
That's so great. I love it.
So you help me unthink.
I know. I should just call it that. Just the Unthink program. My husband keeps wanting me to call it Peace with Stuff. It's like, just like, this helps everything. So just call it Peace with Stuff. I was like, okay,
Yeah, and that's
okay.
the biggest takeaway, I think. If you think it's food, but it's not the food. It's
No,
generally not the food.
no. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that can be my program for people who have too much clutter or something.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Peace with Stuff.
Peace with stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So my last question to you is more kind of like coming to you as a teacher and as a wise person. Now that you've had your own healing experience, and I'm not pretending that Peace with Food was it. You've had a
Mhm.
lifetime of time capsules of other work you've done that you could really take advantage of Peace with Food because of all the beautiful soil you had prepared too for yourself
Mm,
before that.
mm, mm.
But what would you tell somebody who's struggling with emotional eating? If you could have like a heart to heart, like, oh, sweetie, kind of conversation, what would you tell them?
That it's a rich invitation, the discourse or the it's a rich invitation to a place of deep peace with your body. Um, when we can get past the place that it's not the food, so what else is going on? And I think the other biggest teaching from you is just the compassion piece of um, when it is ice cream, right? It's that ice cream kind of day, and what is that, right? And oh, honey, well,
Mhm.
honey, you're trying to soothe something. Do you have some awareness of what you're trying to soothe?
Yeah.
That's such a cut right through the shame cycle of where I think so many of us go, which is I'm such a bad person because I know I shouldn't be eating the ice cream. I should be dealing with my emotions in a better way. I just can't. I'm just gonna because this feels good and now I'm in this trap in this cycle. I just think your way of like even honestly just recognizing, oh yeah, that's totally get that. That's what ice cream's doing right now. It's just offering you some soothing.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I would have loved to hear somebody say this to me, you know,
Yeah.
15 years ago or
Right.
10 years ago. And
Right.
it would have been so helpful. Um, but again, it's such a big jump from looking at the behavior versus
Hmm.
looking at the genesis. And I think it takes, like, it took me a lot of suffering to
Hmm.
get to it,
Hmm.
but I also stumbled upon it because of my somatic experiencing training. I stumbled upon my organic healing.
Hmm.
I never really looked to resolve my food issues because I had given up by that time. And so I think it's so beautiful to have this opportunity to hear from you how it's affected you after a lifetime of work, you know?
Mhm, mhm.
We're not in our teens.
Right, right,
We've
right.
worked at
And some
this.
of us are older than others, let's just say. So yes, yeah,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Yes. Yeah. I heard yesterday that, um, women who are older should be called queenagers. I love that. I love that. I was like, I just and
That's good.
the friend who posted it is in her 70s, and I was like, "Yes."
She is a queenager.
It was
Yay,
so good. It was so good.
yay. Well, so thank you for fortifying my body so that I can move through my queenager years
Mm,
with the zip and the pep and the uh, just the lightness.
yeah.
Yeah,
So good. So good. And I'm so
yeah.
happy for you since you're in the world of, mental health and healing yourself
Mhm,
and, working with people and horses. And
mhm.
I just can imagine that you're showing up in a way that's a blessing to everyone you touch.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. But I do
Yeah.
know that I talk so much more about bodies,
Mm,
um, and regulation and noticing that that is
mm.
inspired and because of what you've taught.
Yeah.
So a
Beautiful.
gift, a gift, a gift.
Beautiful. Keep on giving. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Sue, for your time,
Yes,
for
of
your
course.
care, for your beautiful sharing. And those of you listening or watching, may you be inspired by Sue's story and know that it can be yours too.
Mm.
Thank you.
All right. Take good care.
Okay. You too.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.